Hello everyone! It is that time again. Next season is coming soon, so let's review the past one in details and what we've been through for 7 months this time. Yeah, I doubt it's getting any shorter in the future. I'm gonna first review the major content updates of the season, then what IDs and EGOs were released during it, classifying them as well, before finishing with my personal rating for these as usual. So allow me to paint you the picture. We are beginning our story on the 10th of October of the year 2024. He's released into the world torrents of blood from revealing cantos, blossoming egos, and Madagan Bore over the span of 3 whole weeks. Nice start. Then, well, delays happen with a ton and a half of bug fixes. At least we have some, honestly, quite incredible banners coming up. Well, a month after the end of Canto 7 passes before we are getting news from Project Moon 8th anniversary livestream. Glory to Project Moon. The news? Well, the roadmap for the season pretty much, with other related PM news regarding conventions, ham ham pang pang, or arena concert with Millie. What concerns us here is the roadmap on the top, with the future Arknights collab with its 3-second teaser planned for the end of the year, so maybe next season. Also a few features presented that happened for some, and might for others. But it was a good time to explain the new Mirror Dungeon update that happened on November 28th. It was less of a big change compared to the previous one, mostly bringing quality of life. The theme pack system was kept and improved, starter buffs changed for the starting cost buff selection system, shops and rest stops were fused, rework of fusions. Those were the most notable changes, with some of them happening over 2 weeks, as the art version was released on the following week with a lot of fixes. Following the week after, our big highlight ID of the season was introduced, Manager Dawn, completing the Bloodfiend's team, but also introducing a change, being that you cannot dispense new seasonal IDs before 1 week passes after they're released, the reason being, and I quote, for the sake of money. Well, at least that is honest. Seems to have worked too. Afterwards, bug fixes and some quality of life before the 26th of December, when we get the rerun of Miracle in District 20. Merry Christmas everyone! This was also a new thing, PM deciding to rerun older side cantos that didn't have voice acting and add one, while introducing new egos or IDs related, and a hard mod, mostly just being higher level. This allowed them to fill more of the gaps in between events, with easier to produce reruns. In theory. Still, New Year comes, Happy New Year, and 2 weeks in came out the latest Valpurgis art, based on Marina and featuring the full stop office with the Church of Gears. Man, I still wonder who that blue guy is. Also Magic Bullet, why not? Then 2 more weeks later, at the last event's end, time for the LCB regular checkup. Consistency, we like it. This one brought nice lore with intern Limbus management, senior ranking, and a rock. A big fucking rock. February 6th then came out the rerun of Yield My Flesh to Claim Their Bones. Nice, we keep the pacing, good. Featuring new Kurokumos not completing the existing Mirror world. That's unfulfilling. 2 more weeks and Way 5 came out. This one took back the chain battle structure with rest stops, and I'd expect this to be the case in the future as well. It did bring new stuff in the form of buffs, debuffs, choices between battles, which I liked a lot. And before moving on the next update, we get another director of streams for the 2nd anniversary of Limbus Company. Happy birthday. Game is doing well, not even the creators know why, but things are going. Some quality of life is announced, but it's mostly a good occasion to showcase the upcoming update to Mirror Dungeon coming the same week, introducing Parallel Superposition Mode or Mirror Dungeon Infinity, which is a way to say you can go up to 10 floors now for fun. Or for achievements that were also introduced at the same time, and released over 4 weeks. Meanwhile, 3 weeks in, the pace broke. March 20th, Nocturnal Sweeping came out as the final update of the season, briefly featuring the terrifying sweepers and boomboxes. And now we are on the brink of finally ending the season and going on to Season 6 with Canto 8 on May 15th. What happened in between? Well, there was a bit of a dry period, with only a few quality of life updates and custom language support. But Valpurgis Not, which should have happened, got delayed, so we'll see after the Canto. I guess we did get April Fools as well. So we can see this season they did their best to keep a stable pacing, and it was nice, until the end where it crumbled a bit unfortunately. We'll see if they manage it next season. We still got some nice things and improvements. The inclusion of free runs added a bit more content, even if it is in itself already done and recycled for most players. They seem to have stabilized for Mere Dungeons and Railways though, as changes haven't been as big, mostly being quality improvements and reinforcing Chain Battle's presence, and I doubt it changes more going forward. Mere Dungeon did also receive improvements afterwards with Infinity and achievements, which were welcome in my opinion, being pretty diverse and somewhat challenging, even if grinding is downright a pain. Them being limited in time though is a bit mean, especially for loadout ones requiring specific IDs. Overall, despite stumbling a bit at the end, I hope they can get back on their feet and produce another nice season. But well, a big part of the game is also based on the different IDs and EGOs the gacha brought, so let's take a closer look on this part. Let's start with IDs. This season we got 21 IDs compared to 22 last season. They were separated into 3 2 stars and 18 3 stars, definitely encouraging the slow disappearance of 2 stars, for better or for worse. Additionally, only 5 of them ended up being standard fare, 2 of them being Valpurgis, and the 14 others seasonal, also making the ratio of seasonal IDs increase compared to last season of 8 general for 11 seasonal, probably justified by the increase of events with reruns. As for the also increasingly important keywords, 4 ended up being Burn, more than expected, 7 Bleed, kind of expected, 1 not too relevant Tremor, 8 Rupture counting Bloodfiends, expected as well but more disappointing, 4 Poise here and there, and 1 Sinking and Charge. Akoponglu kinda saved them from a 0. This season they focused more on the keywords needing support the most, managing pretty well to make them very relevant, more or less. Faction wise, 4 of them were Bloodfiends and La Mancha Land, 2 Third Kindred and 2 Seconds. Then we got 2 Full Stops, 2 LCs also being Limbus Company, 2 Kurokumos, 2 A-Shows also being of the Mao pack, 1 Feng Hunt, 2 Sank, 1 East and 1 West, 1 Zwei, 1 Liu, 1 Deviat, 1 Arcop and 1 Middle. Fire Fist is apparently not a faction. From all of them, 9 are Fixers and 3 from Syndicates. The repartition per sinner is as follows. Some got more, but overall the number of IDs for each sinner is balanced, with 3 stars being at 6 for most of them right now, except Acecliff and Otis at 7. But we know Onglu's gonna have his time to suffer, shine both soon enough. Now for Egos, we got 14 this season compared to 15 the last one. Close. 6 of them are from the BP as usual, then 1 general, 1 Valpurgis, and 6 seasonals, following the same tendency as for IDs. For keywords, 2 were Burn, 1 Key and 1 Not, 5 Bleed, and Fell Bullet technically, 3 Tremors, 2 Rupture, weirdly missing, 2 Sinking somewhat, 3 Poise and Key, and 0 Charge. But most importantly, 2 Curse Egos! Woohoo! Out of them, 3 were Teth, 8 Hes, and 3 Valves, with 0 Zains as well, He being in a very high majority. Finally, the repartition per sinner is as shown. Again, sinners have between 7 and 8 egos right now, though about only half of them have a second Zain, while Rodia already got a second Vav. Also Sinclair and Onglu are missing a Vav, but this should be solved soon enough. So let's point out a few things. First, it's obvious when checking numbers that there were a lot of focus on seasonal stuff, with a lack of standard fare IDs and egos. As I said, this can be mostly explained by the fact that we got reruns for events, taking a few slots of both IDs and egos. But even then, most events this season feature 2 IDs/egos with 1 ID banners, when the ones last season had double banners, 1 ID and 1 ego, with also 1 reward. So the rest is explained by having more seasonal IDs or egos in the in-between banners, namely Firefist Gregor and Faust's Rakalja, Deviat Sinclair with Acecliff's Asymmetrical Inertia being the only double banner fully general. This means that from the dispenser will be left Deviat Sinclair, Liu Yi Sang, Sang Dawn, Middle Sinclair, Arcoponglu, Acecliff's Asymmetrical Inertia, as well as BP egos added, and the rest will be gone. For a season at least. Next, concerning keywords, I'll make a more detailed breakdown after next season, but this season Charge got almost absolutely nothing, saved by Onglu at the end, and is due for some support sooner in my opinion. Sinking also didn't get much, but last season was about it, so it's fine. Same for Tremor being okay as well. Bleed is now king with Bloodfiends and Kurokomos, and while Rupture did receive quite a bit, most of it was underwhelming or very niche, the latest additions being the most impactful. I think the lack of egos is the more awkward part, relying mostly on Otis Ebony Stem and Yisang's Dimension Shredder, the newer lasso being pretty meh in comparison. Burn was the big surprise, receiving quite a few good IDs and a key ego for Otis, while Poise also received very nice support with Thoracalgias. I would expect more of Rupture and Poise next season due to a certain character, but I cannot affirm it, as well as Charge at some point, which is due for some renewal. Also, before going into ratings, I like to mention abnormalities we saw this season. 9 of them had egos this season, with 5 of them also appearing as boss fights. So we got 2 egos for Rose Hunter, 2 new egos for Earthling Teddy Bear, bringing it to 3, 2 Anime Akalas for 400 roses, 1 other Fell Blade from their Flow Shots, the first asymmetrical Inertia for Clockwork Time Roly Poly, 2 Christmas Nightmare for Cozy Bed, being only featured in the Miracle in District 20 event like Sandolph, a Magic Bullet Ego and Valpurgis from their Fry Shots, 2 Thoracalgias from Sleeping Bag of Old Days, and 1 surprise random Midlinken Strail for a new Burning Duchess. Makes me wonder if we'll see it appear in next Kanto or in an MD event, with Onglu's upcoming Looking Like Dragon. So we saw more Abnos than last season, even if I don't really expect more in the next, but it's fine. Now for the last part of the video, let me make a bit more of a subjective review, as I'll briefly present my ratings for the season. Those have been done on stream if you wanna see the full thing and explanations. As you might know, I've been giving a small rating on my shorts as my quick personal appreciation of the ID or ego. However, with port creep happening for IDs, it didn't make sense anymore, especially since they streamlined a lot of the IDs kit, making them pretty similar on stuff like coin number, power, conditionals, etc. Which makes it harder to differentiate them a lot outside archetype or a few cases. So I've decided to stop rating them in shorts and keep it for fun for this kind of review video. Second, since I decided to rate for the season, I'll be dismissing any previous rating and influence. So old ratings, they don't matter. So if I rate something the same as something else before, that doesn't mean they are similar. Those ratings are only worth in the context of season, only with IDs and egos in it. Technically, egos are less concerned due to having a cost and not being affected as much. Anyway, enough preamble, here are my ratings for this season, starting with IDs. First, let me define the thresholds we're working with. Manager Dawn is incontestably the best ID of the season, and probably in the game right now. While it's not as broken as others before by mostly having its power mostly contained within Bleed, avoiding overall supremacy, inside its archetype it has the most damage in the game, period, and I think most people could notice it. On the other side, Fangert Onglu would be the weakest of the season. While far from the weakest in the game, its curse of the 15-3 Rupture threshold makes him unwanted in Rupture outside MD, while needing it for most of his conditionals and power, the problem being he is a 2 stars with lower payoff, doubling down on the fact he's able to fulfill them to the detriment of his team. So those are the 2 anchors from which I based myself upon. RCE Yisang, while doing his job well of dying, still has the Death Wish, and even if he isn't good at dying, an ID whose purpose is to not be played by having it killed ASAP, I cannot really rate high and is overall the trickiest case. So at least he's good at being bad in this regard, and is still one of the most interesting IDs of the season even then, proving strength isn't always the best. Then going up another tier, Vice Sinclair is usable as a tank and for Tremor in Fiction, but concludes the 2 stars of the season by, kinda obviously, being subpar to all 3 stars. Then alone on his tier is Deviat Sinclair, who could have potential in Rupture, but got sabotaged by you-know-what. Outside it can still work as a limited time generalist, fulfilling most of his own conditions, but the lack of damage multiplier overall just leaves him pretty far away from his Rodion counterpart. Then we get in the working good IDs with Liu Yisang, being a good burn damage dealer, not bringing that much to the table, however outside constant SP healing, which is convenient, especially for some IDs. I see Faust on the opposite brings much more damage potential, especially with her nuke and are able to fulfill her own conditionals with self-burn, but won't stay too long in this case, and is at the mercy of the ever more present unbreakable coins to stagger her, bringing her potential down. Abnormalities, close to the above rank, can bring pretty high damage thanks to her skill 3 and passive, though her main utility is limited to her skill 3 and bleed teams. Kurokumo Hagemail opened the tier with her ability to support her Syndicate pretty well, and is a good bleed member with Inkover, having damage based on enemies' debuffs, but won't shine too much outside it, and still has incompetent teammates. Hardcore Ponglu is close by having very high damage potential with charge build-up, but has an awkward time building up its potency. Both of the Blood Fiends aren't far from each other, Gregor being an unkillable tank with a good skill 3 nuke, just requiring to build up and pass stagger threshold but working everywhere, while Rodion brings nice damage with good support. Healing, power up, and knife sales strength makes her a good unit supporting a manager very well while inflicting nice bleed count. In between, Middle Sinclair can dish out insane amount of damage with other middles, but still requires careful management of damage taken, speed rolls to redirect counters, and is still missing his big brother and more of the crew. Both Sang fulfill similar roles, having access to easy to fulfill speed conditionals, and building up poise and their status for strength. Merciful might have an easier time building up and got a very good place in Rupture, while Dawn might be slightly harder to fully exploit and set up. Kurokumo Hist shines way more than his captain by being able to dish out insane damage out of overpowered counters and additional passive attacks, but is still bound by necessitating Kurokumos, Lustrez, and other IDs dying. In the last tier below Dawn, the full stop duo brings out insanely high damage potential with their synergy, though they need to be together for full benefit and are time limited, especially Iscliffe bringing out the highest part of the damage, Onglu being more versatile. Both Aishos function similarly, with very high speed able to inflict very high damage with several coin reuses, and bringing the highest rupture count infliction in the game, a good step to making the keyword shine. Finally, our lone Fire Fist would not have died if he was as strong as this idea. Gregor brings out forbidden damage, building up during the fight but needing no help whatsoever, no limit on time, and able to fulfill his burn conditionals by himself with his burn count. Alright, it took longer than I hoped. I know I did mention that I would want to differentiate them more, but even then it's pretty hard with the ways they tend to be similar in a lot of points. Still, the fact that I would categorize most of them as strong kinda proves to me that they managed to make most IDs feel relevant and interesting to play, as it correlates well. Geostars are disappearing, and while I would not say it's for the best, keeping some interesting IDs with very unique playstyle or mechanics like LCE Sang for them wouldn't be that bad, allowing some different plays even with more underwhelming IDs. Also, tiers are not made to be hard limits, and both extremities can balance with the higher lower tiers. Well, now let's go into egos. Here ratings can be compared to my older ones, as cost does play a part in the judgment, and power creep didn't happen much to them, being closer to feature creep for some of them. Well, except Dawn's Johnny Mikala. While requiring bleed for most of its strength, it is not that bad outside it, and like the idea associated, it brings out so much damage it's hard to not put it at the top ego of the season. On the bottom side, the last place would be between Faust Lasso or Rodion's Indicant Trial. The former is kind of an additional skill 3, bringing out some AoE damage to Rupture archetype without bringing much utility, Lasso the status being limited to corrosion. Rodion, meanwhile, is just very awkward. For 10 scenes very present in Burn, she can heal, deal a bit of AoE damage, and some damage setup, but set setup concerns skills you're using the same turn and isn't that incredible, he is outclassed by most healing egos, damage isn't that high, and so is clashing. The corrosion is where you can get more Searing Bird Cage, but goes through plus coins on a 60 SP cost, rendering damage more awkward, most utility concealed to main targets, and to top it off, passive isn't really useful. Overall awkward, but I cannot dismiss the first part, therefore I would not consider any of them weak. Above them, Gregor's Christmas Nightmare acts as an okay 5 attack weight AoE you can throw in Tremor or Stinking Teams for some damage and self buff, which is okay. Ishmael's version bringing more to the table with better clashing and utility, especially for Tremor or with their Molar ID. Onglu's Lasso, similarly to Faust's version, acts more as an additional skill 3, bringing nice damage for a cheap cost, but has more utility than the other version with easier access to Lasso, the status, and slightly higher damage. Yisang's Fell Bullet is a pretty weird ego to categorize, as it wants to sacrifice an ID and do damage. In this regard, it does its job well on both parts, so it'll go here, and the strength of the strategy mostly depends on the IDs. Both Eknail go above, but on different sides. Sinclair's version is a debuffer one, bringing an insanely high amount of negative statuses, just that they don't do much by themselves, but would be a perfect setup for some IDs. Rojan's version is the buffer, bringing nice healing to allies with some debuffs on enemies as well, attack buffs on corrosion, but also has a very nice passive for bleed. Heathcliff's asymmetrical inertia is more of a potential, as Heathcliff is missing a self-tremor ID, Clockwinding being more of an ammo thing right now, but having amazing potential in the future, while being a nice Tremor Infliction and Burst Ego with an amazing passive as well. Mersol's Shunemekala doesn't have the AoE damage potential of its counterpart, but is incredible against bosses with status Rose Wedge and just bleed count activation, or some with Sanguine Desire, but really not useful outside bleed, outside of, you guessed it, an additional skill tree. Both Thoracalgias end up close as amazing poise support. Ryoshus can bring higher poise support in the proper conditions, really great for sacrifice strats as well, but again not really usable outside those cases. Faust is more consistent for lesser payoff, but the constant healing is nice. Finishing with Magic Bullet, being just skin burn by bringing more Dark Flame than ever. It does require some setup and several uses, D8 as well, slightly cutting it off the above tier in my opinion, burn just ready to pay such a cost for this. So like IDs, I think EGOs have been pretty nice this season, just being even more restricted to keyword than before. Unlike IDs however, they have been pretty different in forms and features, making the stronger ones pretty unique and almost mandatory in some archetypes. Alright, that's enough opinions on the internet for me today. In conclusion, this season was pretty good. In terms of updates, it was overall consistent, Kento was strong, IDs and EGOs interesting outside Rupture. If, or rather once, they manage to fix their issues with Kentos taking so much resources, it disrupts the schedule like it did the last seasons, I'd say we would be cruising through the rest of the game without too much troubles. I'm obviously still excited for next Kento, and Ongu unleashing the power of the Red Thorn. Yeah, that is a Tower of God reference. I don't know if he will have a Golden Bow impalement, but we got an impalement alright. Tears of the Tarnished Blood, huh? Tarnished. I hope he finds his grace, heh? Yes, it's an Elden Ring reference, so let's stop there. And that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Final message, well, season's over. We made it, people. On to the next. I'll be streaming the Kanto every week as usual, and there won't be much outside shorts for the duration. Afterwards, I kinda wanna try my hand at an essay on Limbus story's quality, but it might not happen. I give news every Monday in the community tab, so I'll update you on there. Subscribe if you wanna be notified and all. In any case, see you next time, and keep your sanity high in this slow descent into the inferno.